An immigrant donated blood to a dying girl, miraculously curing the illness that took his own child. Raul Mendoza hadn't known this would happen when he walked into the hospital that morning, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he signed the donor forms. He'd simply been answering the call for rare blood types, something he'd seen on a flyer at the community center where he occasionally attended English classes. The sterile smell of the hospital brought it all rushing back. The antiseptic corridors, the hushed voices, the mechanical beeps that had counted down his daughter's final days. 2 years had passed since Lucia had died, yet time hadn't softened the edges of his grief. It had merely taught him to carry it differently. "Be negative," the nurse had said, looking up from his paperwork with widened eyes. "That's exactly what we need. You're quite rare, Mr. Mendoza." Rare. The word echoed in his mind as the needle slipped into his vein. Lucia had been rare too. Her blood type, her condition, her spirit that had remained undimmed even as her body failed her. The doctors in Mexico City had explained it was a genetic anomaly, something they'd never seen before. By the time they understood what was happening, it was too late. Raul closed his eyes as his blood flowed through the tube. In his pocket was the small wooden bird he'd carved during those endless hospital nights. Lucia had loved birds, their freedom, their songs. "They carry messages between worlds, Papa," she'd told him once, her voice already weakened by the disease ravaging her small body. He'd come to America 6 months after burying her. His wife, Elena, had stayed behind, their grief pulling them in opposite directions. "I cannot leave her," Elena had whispered the night before his departure. They both knew she meant Lucia's grave, not their crumbling house with its empty child's bedroom. "All done, Mr. Mendoza," the nurse said, placing a cotton ball over the small puncture in his arm. "You've been very generous today." He nodded, not trusting his voice. Generosity had nothing to do with it. This was penance, perhaps, or simply the only thing he knew to do with his pain, transform it into something that might spare another family from experiencing the same. As he stood to leave, a commotion erupted down the hall. A gurney pushed by running medical staff rushed past the open door, a small figure beneath white sheets, a woman's desperate voice calling out, "Hannah! Hannah, Mommy's here!" Raul froze. The woman's face as she ran alongside the gurney. He recognized that particular blend of terror and hope. He had worn it himself for 3 long months. He left the hospital with his donor card, the cotton ball still taped to his inner arm. Outside, spring was asserting itself against the remnants of winter, pink cherry blossoms contrasting against the gray city skyline. He would go back to his small apartment, to his job at the furniture workshop where his skill with wood had earned him steady, if modest, employment. He would continue assembling the fragments of his new life, piece by jagged piece. But something pulled at him. The woman's voice, calling her daughter's name, had lodged itself in his chest. 2 days later, Raul returned to the hospital. He told himself he was just dropping off more wooden birds. He'd carved a dozen since his donation, each one taking shape beneath his knife, as if guided by some force beyond his conscious mind. The receptionist accepted them with a puzzled smile. "They're for the children," he explained in his careful English. For Hope." It was then he saw her, the woman from the hallway, standing by the coffee machine, her fingers pressed against her forehead. Shadows hung beneath her eyes, her clothes rumpled as if she'd been wearing them for days. He shouldn't intrude on her grief. He knew better than anyone how hollow words of comfort could sound. Yet his feet carried him toward her. "Excuse me," he said softly. "I saw you the other day. Your daughter?" She looked up, surprised by the intrusion. Then something in his expression must have registered. "You have a child here too?" Raul's throat tightened. "No, not anymore." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. "I donated blood. I saw them taking your daughter." "Hannah," she said, and the name seemed to both strengthen and weaken her. "She has a rare blood condition. They've never seen anything like it. Her body is attacking itself somehow." She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. The transfusions helped temporarily, but a cold wave washed through Raul's body. "How old is she?" 8. "She'll be 9 next month." Her voice caught. "If she..." Lucia was 8, he said, the words escaping before he could catch them. "My daughter. The same..." Her body attacked itself. The doctors in Mexico, they didn't understand. The woman, Sarah, he would learn, stared at him with sudden intensity. What happened to her? He couldn't say the words, but his expression answered for him. "I'm Kate," she said after a moment, extending her hand. "Kate Harlow, Raul Mendoza." Their hands met, a bridge formed of shared fear. "Would you like to meet Hannah?" she asked suddenly. "I don't know why, but maybe it would help to talk to someone who understands." He nearly refused. Walking into another child's hospital room, seeing another parent maintaining that bedside vigil, it would tear open wounds he'd been carefully bandaging for 2 years. But the wooden bird in his pocket seemed to grow warmer, and he found himself nodding. Hannah Harlow lay in a bed that seemed too large for her diminished form. Machines tracked her vital signs. IV lines delivered medications and fluids. But what struck Raoul most was her eyes. Bright and alert, taking in everything around her with the same curious intensity Lucia had maintained until her final days. "Hannah, this is Mr. Mendoza," Kate said, her voice lifting with forced cheerfulness. "He's a visitor who makes beautiful wooden birds." Raoul reached into his pocket, suddenly shy. The bird he withdrew was smaller than the others, its wings outstretched as if caught mid-flight. Hannah's pale face lit up. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice thin but eager. "Is it a swallow?" He nodded, surprised. How did you know?" "I have a bird book. Grandma gave it to me when I first got sick. I've memorized almost all of them." She turned the carving in her small hands. "Swallows return to the same place every year. They're very loyal." "Yes," Raoul said, something in his chest loosening slightly. "They are." Later in the hallway, Kate's expression was troubled. "The latest transfusion isn't working as well as the previous ones," she confided. "Her body is becoming resistant. The doctor says..." She stopped, unable to continue. What type is she?" Raoul asked. "B negative. It's rare, makes everything more complicated." Raoul felt a strange buzzing in his ears. "That's my type. I donated 2 days ago." Kate's eyes widened. "That was you!" "Your blood went to Hannah. The nurse said it was from a first-time donor at this hospital. The coincidence seemed too significant to be random, yet too cruel to be meaningful. His blood flowing through Hannah's veins, fighting the same disease that had taken Lucia. "I will come back," he promised before leaving. "Tomorrow." That night in his apartment, Raoul dreamed of Lucia. Not as she'd been in her final days, but as she'd been before. Running through the garden behind their house in Mexico City, chasing butterflies, her laughter carrying on the warm breeze. In the dream, she turned to him, sunlight catching in her dark hair. "Listen to the birds, Papa," she said. "They're trying to tell you something." He woke with tears on his face and the first tentative threads of a feeling he'd almost forgotten. Hope. The next day, he arrived at the hospital to find Kate pacing outside Hannah's room, her face transformed. "How?" she called when she saw him. "Something's happening. Her numbers, they're improving. The doctor can't explain it. The transfusion. Your blood, it's different somehow." He followed her into the room where a doctor was examining Hannah, whose cheeks showed the faintest hint of color that hadn't been there the day before. "Mr. Mendoza," the doctor said, looking up from his chart. "Mrs. Harlow mentioned you donated the blood used in Hannah's last transfusion?" Raoul nodded, uncertain. "Have you ever been tested for genetic anomalies, specifically related to your immune system?" The question transported him back to a different hospital, different doctors, the same desperate hope. "After my daughter died," he said slowly, "they found something in my blood, antibodies they hadn't seen before. They said I must have been exposed to something, that I had developed a resistance to whatever killed her." The doctor's expression intensified. "And your daughter had the same condition as Hannah?" "The symptoms were the same. They called it an autoimmune anomaly. I'd like to run some tests, if you're willing," the doctor said. "There's something in your blood that's neutralizing Hannah's condition. If we can identify it..." "Yes," Raoul interrupted. "Anything." Over the next weeks, as spring fully blossomed outside the hospital windows, Raoul became a fixture in Hannah's room. He brought more carvings, not just birds now, but tiny foxes, rabbits, and deer that formed a miniature woodland on her windowsill. He told her stories about growing up in Mexico, about the workshop where he now created furniture, about Lucia's love of wild creatures. Hannah soaked up his stories and shared her own, about her school friends who wrote her letters, about her dream of becoming a veterinarian, about the constellation of stars her father had painted on her bedroom ceiling before he'd left them 3 years ago. Kate watched their growing friendship with grateful tears often glistening in her eyes. "She hasn't been this animated in months," she confided to Raoul one evening as they shared coffee in the hospital cafeteria. "It's not just the blood treatments. It's you." Raoul shook his head. "It is the medicine. The doctors are making progress." "Yes, but..." Kate hesitated. "Hannah lost her father right before she got sick, Having you here, it's healing something the medicine can't touch. The doctors confirmed what they'd suspected. Raul's blood contained antibodies that specifically targeted the rogue cells attacking Hannah's system. Through some miracle of biology, his body had developed a defense against the very disease that had claimed his daughter. It's extraordinarily rare. Doctor, Reynolds explained, your exposure to your daughter's illness likely triggered your immune system to develop these specific antibodies. Had she received transfusions from you during her illness? The implication hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. Raul couldn't allow himself to dwell on it. The cruel irony that his blood might have saved Lucia, had anyone thought to try. Instead, he focused on Hannah, whose improvement was now undeniable. The pallor left her cheeks, replaced by a healthy flush. Her energy returned in bursts, allowing her longer periods away from bed. The forest of woodland creatures on her windowsill grew, becoming more elaborate as Raul channeled his hope into each carving. On a warm Tuesday in May, Hannah was allowed to go outside for the first time in months. Raul and Kate walked on either side of her wheelchair as they navigated to the hospital's small garden. Look, Hannah pointed upward, her voice stronger than it had been since Raul met her. Swallows! Above them, the birds darted and swooped against the blue sky, their forked tails distinctive even at a distance. They've come back, Raul said quietly. Hannah reached for his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his calloused ones. Like you came back. Every day. That evening, after Hannah had fallen asleep, Kate walked Raul to the hospital entrance. The doctors think she might be able to go home next week, she said, her voice trembling with cautious joy. They want you to continue donating regularly to refine the treatment. Of course, Raul replied. Whatever is needed. Kate hesitated, then spoke in a rush. I know you have your own life, your job, but would you still visit? Hannah would miss you terribly, and She stopped, color rising in her cheeks. We both would. The loneliness of his small apartment flashed through his mind. The silence he'd grown accustomed to, but never comfortable with. I would like that very much. That night, he called Elena for the first time in months. Their conversations had grown increasingly strained, the weight of their shared loss pulling them apart rather than binding them together. But tonight, words flowed more easily. There is a little girl, he told her. Hannah. She had what Lucia had. He heard Elena's sharp intake of breath. Had? She is getting better. My blood arm, it contains something that fights the disease. The doctors say, he had to pause, emotions threatening to overwhelm him. They say I developed antibodies from being with Lucia. My body learned to fight what took her. Elena was silent for so long that Raul feared the connection had been lost. Finally, her voice came thick with tears. She is still helping people then. Our Lucia. Through you. Yes, he whispered. I think she is. When Hannah left the hospital the following week, Raul was there, carrying a special gift. A carved wooden box filled with tiny swallows, each one suspended on nearly invisible fishing line, so they appeared to be in flight when the lid was open. Hannah's eyes widened with delight. It's like they're really flying. To remind you that you are free now, Raul said, but also that some things always return home. Kate invited him to dinner the following weekend, the first of many meals they would share. Hannah's recovery continued, monitored closely by doctors who were documenting everything from medical journals. Raul's blood donations became a regular part of his life. No longer painful reminders, but hopeful contributions. Summer arrived, bringing with it warm evenings when the three of them would sit in Kate's small backyard, watching fireflies rise from the grass like earthbound stars. Hannah grew stronger, her medical appointments becoming less frequent, her laughter more common. One evening, as Hannah slept inside, Kate and Raul sat on the porch steps, a comfortable silence between them. I've been thinking, Kate said finally, about coincidences. Or maybe they're not coincidences at all. Raul looked at her questioningly. You coming to this country, to this city, donating blood on exactly the day Hannah needed it, having exactly the thing in your blood that could save her. She shook her head in wonder. What are the odds? Very small, he acknowledged. Like finding B-negative blood. Do you ever think, Kate hesitated, that Lucia somehow guided you here? A few months ago, such a suggestion might have seemed painful, even offensive. But now, watching the swallows that had indeed returned to nest in Kate's backyard, he found comfort in the possibility. She loved birds, he said softly. She believed they carried messages between worlds. Kate's hand found his in the gathering darkness. Thank you for listening to them. In late July, Elena called with news. She was considering a visit to America. Just for a short time, she said, her voice tentative. "I would like to meet this Hannah. And to see you, Raul." Something that had been tightly knotted in his chest for 2 years loosened slightly. "I would like that very much." In August, Hannah started a new treatment derived from Raul's antibodies. By September, her doctors used the word remission for the first time. On an October afternoon, with leaves turning gold and red around them, Raul took Hannah and Kate to the park where he'd often walked during his first lonely months in America. Hannah ran ahead, her strength fully returned, her backpack bouncing as she raced toward the playground. "It's a miracle," Kate said, watching her daughter. "The doctors are calling it a medical breakthrough, but I know what it really is." "What?" Raul asked, though he thought he knew. "Love," she said simply. "Finding each other when we needed it most." Raul thought of all the seemingly random events that had led him here. The grief that drove him from his home, the furniture shop that hired him despite his limited English, the flyer at the community center, his decision to donate blood on that particular day. Perhaps Elena was right. Perhaps none of it was random at all. As Hannah waved to them from the top of the slide, her face flushed with life, Raul felt Lucia's presence more strongly than he had since her death. Not as a painful absence, but as a guiding force that had led him across borders and through grief to this new beginning. The wooden bird in his pocket, the one he always carried, seemed to pulse with warmth. "They carry messages between worlds, Papa." "Yes," he said, squeezing Kate's hand. "I believe you're right." Above them, a formation of swallows cut across the autumn sky, heading south for winter but certain to return when spring called them home again. Raul watched them until they disappeared, then turned his gaze back to Hannah, to Kate, to the future unfolding before them. A future built from loss and love, from blood and hope, from the mysterious threads that connect one heart to another across all boundaries. In his mind, he heard Lucia's laughter mingling with Hannah's, a harmony of past and present that no longer tore at his heart, but instead made it sing. An immigrant had donated blood to a dying girl, never knowing it would miraculously cure the illness that took his own child. But in saving Hannah's life, Raul had also saved his own. And somewhere he was certain Lucia was smiling.